Welcome in everyone. Today we're looking at Humankind's sneak peek Vitruvian update, the next big update to launch in Humankind. I'm going to take you through some of the key changes that it's going to introduce and try and answer some frequently asked questions as we go through as well. My name is JumboPixel. Like the video if you like fast content, and let's jump in. First up, what will be in this big Vitruvian update hitting our game in April, so next month? The first thing that they highlighted right off the front, and many of you will be, I think, quite excited, tentatively excited about this one. You may have seen it at the top of my screen there already. It is, of course, changes to affinity balancing. In particular, this one here, the builder focus of the Egyptians, and the Babylonian one that you saw just before on screen as well. The gameplay will try and replicate, by the way, the things that I'm talking about, wherever possible. It's also some spicy new gameplay, so hopefully you enjoy it and these sexy yields. Either way, affinity balancing was the first thing up on their list. They go on to say there's been a lot of feedback about different affinities. That there has. Builders and scientists are almost always seen as the strongest. I completely agree. The impacts most discussions about balance. This impacts it, I should say. And so with this update, they are planning on placing, quote, some additional restrictions on their abilities. It sounds like we're going with the option of pushing these affinities down rather than lifting others up, although I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we see them lift other affinities up. I would remind you, since the start of the game, since Humankind released, the expansionist ability has been buffed considerably. It's much stronger and easier to use now. Likewise, the aesthete ability saw some love too, and those are just the two that come to mind. Either way, we should expect to see additional restrictions on both the industrial and scientific affinity ability. If you don't know, basically those abilities convert all of your other key yields into that yield. So if you're using the builder ability, it converts your science and gold into industry as well. You'll see that play out in this footage. I think, and from what we discussed on stream today, there were some good ideas in chat as well. It could be where the ability is limited in the number of turns that you can use it. At the moment, you can use it infinitely. Maybe it receives a maximum turns of 5, just like its minimum use case is 5 turns. I don't know. I'd be really interested to hear about your thoughts. It's something that I'll probably unpack in a bit more detail once I've had a bit more time to think through it and once I've read your comments. So please do comment below. Let me know what you think. How should these affinities be adjusted? They're big, they're powerful. Most players agree they are the most powerful in the game. At the very least, they're some of the easier ones to understand. The aesthete ability, for example, has complications within it that I think a lot of players don't understand, like the protection of your cultural ideology. Either way, like I say, something to unpack down the line. I think them placing some extra restrictions on these abilities will be very good for the overall health and balance of the game. It would be nice to show some extra love to some of those affinities that don't often see it. Anyway, let's move on and talk about the next additional change, notifications. I won't dwell on them too long because it's not that sexy, and there are other more important ones to cover that you'll like to hear about, including religion and sieges and so much more. But basically, in a nutshell, the notifications, which are to the right of where I've placed this text on your screen, if you didn't know, just to the left of sort of the turn button there down the bottom. Basically, there's a lot of information that gets pushed through Humankind. Notifications come up down the bottom. You'll see me interact with them throughout the video, so keep an eye out for that. But basically, in a nutshell, some of our players, quote, were disappointed that turning notifications on or off was rather all or nothing. With this update, you'll be able to change this for each type of notification. It's useful. Like you see here, some of them are generated by grievances. Here's another one generated by retreat. I knew that I retreated. Maybe I could turn that off. Whereas other things that it highlights, like for example, cultures changing, is really important, but it can get lost in the mess down there. It would be nice to see the system streamlined a little bit. Can't wait to see what they do with it. Another thing that I can't wait to see what they do with, and one that you've been calling out for as well, it's maybe nearly as spicy as the first signal change, religion improvements. Here they are down the bottom of your screen. Basically, the developers, Amplitude Studios, go on to say that many players have highlighted, and interesting, this wasn't something that I particularly found an issue with, so it's curious to note, the separation between historic religions from their tenets to give more freedom. The AI, however, no longer started adopting historic religions, where tenets match each other. They go on to say that this was a problem because it didn't accurately reflect historical religions. I might just park that to one side and note what they've actually changed. So, that was what they will change, I should say. Basically, they say that this has been resolved. The tenant screen has been updated to show tenant effects and how to adopt historic religions more clearly. So, reading through that, it sounds to me like basically the harbour religions that flow through, or whatever connections there are between tenets within the religious system, will be more clearly highlighted up front. If you want to pursue Buddhism, these are the ones you should take, or something along those lines. They also hint at the sort of that AI behavior in there. They say that AI no longer adopted historic religions. So we might also see some changes to the way that the AI is drafting its religion. Again, religion, a very powerful system in Humankind, much more hands-off than other strategy games as well. It's important to note. I think that's all I'll say on the religious improvements for now. Something to watch for more information on. That's the one that has me most interested, although it seems like from what they've said, it's more of a helping the players with information on screen and changing some AI behaviors to maybe be slightly more historically accurate, rather than fundamental changes to the system. Again, watch this space, just like everything else in this Vitruvian update. Loads more information to come. Let's move on. The final sort of big point as part of this leak of information, voluntarily of course, was early modern sieges. Basically what was happening was, particularly, well, initially there were AI issues around sieges. They've fixed those. They'll probably continue to do so reading through the rest of the patches. But more importantly, what they're signaling here is a change to the way that the AI handles siege units. I should say the computer handles siege units. Basically, in the early modern era, some players pointed out that you would lose access to siege engines while you were at war. Bit of an issue. They go on to slightly humorously say that with this update, engineers should no longer forget how to build a trebuchet in the middle of a siege. I like it when someone can have a bit of a laugh at themselves, and it reads to me like maybe that's what they were doing there. It's always hard to tell. Either way, a nice fix. I don't often rely on siege units because my sieges tend to be instantly sorted. So, personally, abilities playing out in practice, not a big one. Maybe this is important to you. Either way, that is the last of the 4 big changes highlighted in the Vitruvian update. The affinity balancing, the notification options, the religious improvements, and early modern sieges. There is, of course, always a little bit more in the detail, so I'll cover off that before rounding out this video with some overall thoughts on the nature of this patch, when we can expect it to hit what we've learned last time, and what the game could look like moving forward. It sounds like a lot, but bear with me. First up, to summarize, I think that the other important things to note are they go on to say that there'll be many other smaller changes and fixes, as you would expect. If you look back through the patch notes, you'll see every time there's a massive list of bug fixes and updates. I love it. And then finally, a little teaser for the future. From now until the update is released, a reminder, they've signaled it will be late April, we'll be taking in greater detail about these points. Further improvements based on your feedback, like improved empire names. Huge. Huge. And surrender mechanics as well. Another thing that they've signaled they'll be looking at moving forward. The fact that they've signaled those two here up front and not chosen to highlight some of the other things that were highlighted in the What's Next for Humankind roadmap that they released a couple of months ago makes me think that maybe the empire naming or providing sort of more unique, manageable, measurable, whatever you want to say, metrics to empires is something that could be coming in the future. Massive. To be honest, even if they just introduced an ability to name the empires, I'd be pretty happy and on board with that. If you don't know, the idea I believe behind that change is to try and make it feel like your opponents are a more impactful, dare I say, Civ-like part of the game. You actually know what culture other people are. Or you're not just referring to them as the pink empire or the blue empire, because it's changing all the time and you can't keep up. I think there are a number of ways that they could fix this, and one of them, one of the big sort of upfront obvious ones, could be around naming empires or creating more of a consistent identity through eras, because I think fundamentally if we draw this down to the actual issue at its core, it is that identifiability, that relatability through eras, rather than a name or a color, right? These are smaller attributes, I believe, part of a wider problem. Either way, it'd be nice to see them unpack that, and we should of course continue to expect, as I say, massive improvements to the game, to how it works, to how bugs are fixed, but also to broader balancing. And that's something that I touched on at the very start of the video. with the real meaty part of the Vitruvian Humankind game update, that affinity balancing. That is the piece that will absolutely be capturing my interest more than anything else here. How will they handle the builder and scientific affinity, and also the general power of industry? That's, of course, not a unique problem to Humankind. Anybody who's played any 4X game will know that industry and science tend to be very, very, very powerful. It's a hard thing to unpack. I'm not sure how they're going to do it. Like I said at the start of the video, if you've been bouncing around the time cards, you might have missed it. I would love your feedback below. I'd like to do more of a deep dive unpack on some of these issues, particularly as we hear more from Amplitude and more from Humankind. At the moment, we've just received some relatively brief comments, and I've unpacked them here in this video while providing some of my own thoughts along the way. Either way, this looks like a good time for me to tap out of this video because the cults have just declared war on me and I've got 1,000 notifications to sort through, while also building some walls. I'm gonna leave it here, everybody. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.